As an office, you may have out-of-network benefits, or you may just choose to courtesy bill for your patients. So this video is going to go over a general workflow or an idea of a workflow for courtesy billing in CareHD. Some offices choose to do things their specific way, but I'm going to touch on what it will look like in CareHD. The first thing I would suggest is setting up the patient's policy, and you can either add in a patient responsibility amount into the policy, or you can add the patient responsibility amount as you're manually adding charges, because you're going to have to assign that the patient owes something towards those services. Otherwise, as the patient is coming in and paying, they're just going to have a credit. But in general, kind of the few main concepts is you're going to have to assign at some point in the process an amount that the patient owes. You're going to still have to take the services through the billing process in CareHD, and you're going to need to post the EOB. And so if you're not accepting assignment, most of the time that payment is $0, but you're still going to have to complete the billing process in CareHD, which also includes posting the EOB. Let's first start with an example of, say the patient pays as they came in and received their service, and you added charges onto their ledger, but you have not set that they are responsible for a certain amount. Let's go through what that would look like. Let's say they received a 3 to 4 region adjustment, and the charge is $65, and you are saying that they have paid $65. On the ledger, and you can see on the snapshot, but I'm going to expand the ledger a little bit, you can see that the patient has a credit. They have a credit 65 because they have a payment, but there's nothing that is being allocated that they are responsible for. Deductible, copay, coinsurance, and other are patient responsibility columns. So you can see they're all blank. So I'm saying I'm billing this service to insurance. Insurance is essentially responsible for it all, or I'm assuming they're responsible for everything. Patient doesn't have any responsibility. You can assign patient responsibility within the patient's policy setup or when you're posting the EOB. Some people really prefer to do that at the time of the EOB posting, as that is the source of truth for what the patient owes. But some people want to preemptively have what the patient owes. If you want to preemptively have what the patient owes in their file so that it's added to the services, you have to set that up in their policy. So if I go into their cases, insurance coverage, let me add a policy. Here I can either put in a remaining deductible amount, or you could even put, say I know they're always going to owe $65. I can put $65 into the copay field, and that will apply $65 for the visit. So either put in a remaining deductible or a copay amount, and that will apply as a responsibility on the line item for the patient. If you do this, it will preemptively add what the patient owes onto a service as they're receiving the services. Now you can correct this amount when you're posting the EOB, but some people don't want to do this step and they only add the patient responsibility when posting the EOB. Some people want to add it in the policy so that it preemptively adds a patient responsibility so that the ledger will balance out and not show that the patient has a credit while they're waiting for the EOB. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a copay. The other huge thing when setting up the policy, regardless of adding a patient responsibility amount or not, is accept assignment, you have to select no. This will go onto the claim and tell the insurance company to send the payment to the patient and not to the office. So regardless of the whole patient responsibility conversation, if you're preemptively doing it or doing it at the time of the EOB posting, you always are going to have to put accept assignment as no if you are courtesy billing. So let me remove this service now. Let me just void out this service. and show what it would look like now that we've added a responsibility onto the patient's policy. So I still see that they paid the $65. But now when I go in and add the service, you can see the charge is still $65, but it pulled that $65 in the copay field. I'm going to submit. Now when I look at their ledger, I have a responsibility that the patient owes $65, and they have a payment of $65, and so now their balance is $0. So this may be an option for offices that want the ledger to preemptively show accurate balances. Again, when you're posting the EOB, that is always the source of truth of what a patient would owe. You can set up what the patient owes in the policy, or the office would just need to keep in mind, if every time I add a service, let's add a different extra spinal, I can manually put in what they owe on each service as I'm manually putting in the charges. So you can either put an amount in the copay or remaining deductible, and it will pull on one service. It's going to pull on the most expensive service for the day. Or if you're manually adding charges, you can manually enter what they owe in one of these patient responsibility fields. Now I'm going to take this service through the billing process. So if I go to insurance, create claim, and see here's my patient in the list. Now by default it's trying to batch bill them. So just for our training purposes, I'm going to uncheck everybody and just bill out my courtesy bill. Create claim. Now at this point, I can send to clearinghouse, download the electronic claim file, or print it to a HCFA form. Whichever way you need to send it off to the clearinghouse so that you can courtesy bill, you would do that here. Now at this point, for looking at the ledger, everything still looks just like it did, except for the services in yellow because I have taken it through the billing process in CareHD. Now what does it look like when I post the EOB? I would go to Insurance, Process EOB. Here's my patient. I would put in a memo, a check number, the check amount. Now, the check amount, majority of the time, is going to be $0 because if you are not accepting assignment, the insurance company should not be paying you. They pay the patient. So in this situation, I would put that my check amount is $0. I would click into the payment column and type 0 and verify what the EOB is saying. Is the $65 going towards deductible, copay, coinsurance, etc.? Now again, this is where I was saying that some offices just put in the patient responsibility at this stage. So copay, this would be 0. It would be blank because this $65 is pulling over from when we put it on the policy and it added onto the service. If we didn't do all of that, then everything would be 0, and at this time, the office assigns the patient responsibility amount because they're going off the EOB. It is always a safer bet to post the patient's full responsibility from the EOB because that is your source of truth. But again, some people want it preemptively on the ledger, and so you can put it in the policy amount, which will apply as services are being rendered, but always verify on this EOB posting screen against what your EOB says. Let's say that everything matches up, then I can finalize this EOB. So now when I look at my patient's ledger, I am going to click Show Billing Info just so I can see all of my columns. And everything is still the same. I have my patient's payment, and then what they owe is canceling each other out so that their running balance is accurate, and insurance paid 0. Now if there's a $0 payment, right now that is showing as a dashed line, but if I go into insurance history under date paid, click on history, I can show that insurance paid 0. So again, courtesy billing, you're always going to select no with accepting an assignment, and you're going to have to assign the patient's responsibility towards a service at some point, either in the policy setup or when you're posting the EOB. You're going to have to take the services through the complete billing process in ChiroHD, so that includes getting it billed in ChiroHD and sending it to the clearinghouse. And then you're going to need to post the EOB because we're going to need to clear this item off of your AR. Most of the time, the EOB and payment amount will be zero, but you have to post it regardless. So that is a general idea and workflow for courtesy billing. But again, some offices have their nuanced workflows, but this is a general idea.